Okay, so it's Christmas Eve. It's snowy and raining sleet in Ladner, East Ladner, Delta, BC. And I'm here. Committing to this thing to try to make quote unquote astrology content on a daily basis. And before I kind of get into this, I have some ideas of where I want to take this particular video. I'm doing it in a way where I've started off a few threads, like I made a video about Game of Thrones, and yesterday I did a video on Mars retrograde, and the amount of things I have in my head that I could talk about and actually getting there is like, I'm kind of working that out in the process of making these videos, and my strategy is to just do these like segments and kind of work on it as I go. And although I'm actually, on one hand, I'm getting something out of it, I think, because it's a way I'm getting over something that there's something I don't want to embarrass myself and put out stupid shit, but there's something about it that it's like I'm tempted to put out whatever that embarrassing stupid shit would be, and then like as a way, like a kind of a yoga almost, like, because to try to get over this, like there's something about it that I'm having trouble with or something. So, and I have to admit, like, I don't know. There's one of it is the problem of what Byung Chul Han calls transparency, which is like how much you're putting yourself online, and it's all. There's another thing about like the whole thing about what I'm talking about political stuff too, right? Which is a lot of people who do astrology or into the spiritual stuff, right? I mean, they make this move of being completely neutral, or to say that, like, you know, obviously there's something beyond, something transcendent that transcends the political, basically. And that's essentially, I'm agreeing with those kinds of sentiments. And so there's something I want to address there with, like, being that political is maybe not even, I don't know if it's misguided or if it's giving the wrong impression. But the point that still I'm going to keep doing it though. I just don't know how to, you know, if I'm presenting it the wrong way, I don't know. I'm going to have to deal with that in my videos, basically. So right now I'm going to keep the ball rolling with it. Basically, like, I'm still committing to my argument, which is basically that if you take this thing about, like, the new age spiritual stuff going on, which is not a consensus thing at all, it's a bunch of different stuff, right? But if you take what the perennialist philosophy kind of approach, or if I was raised in a Unitarian Universalist family, so if you want to understand where my perspective comes from at an early, you know, I've been conditioned in that this particular whatever church organization that has a more pluralistic view, that mainline Christianity is something a bit foreign to me. So that's where that's kind of my conditioning coming to this, and why I'm not like a traditional Catholic or a Protestant, or I don't have these kinds of, I'm a white guy, but I don't have as much of that influence as from the Unitarian Universalist perspective, basically, right? And okay, I'm kind of like losing my train of thought here by getting into talking about Unitarianism. Well, I don't know. I'm just gonna, certain things I wanted to like approach with the politics about this. First of all, that the appeal to making a politically neutral position in the first place, basically. To make a move to say that I am going to like produce some content and put it on the internet, and what I'm doing is representing a person who has transcended the political, and I'm offering a neutral thing to everybody because I've transcended all you know, and I'm not a white guy who doesn't have my own. But no, I don't want to make too much of an identity politics thing about it either, as well, because there's something about also positioning myself as a leftist, and the fact that leftism often gets associated with this identity politics stuff that I have to admit, I'm gonna like admit that I got bogged down in it to some extent with there's something going on with the spiritual emergence scene, which is I'm kind of keeping that separate from my astrology channel, but it's a relevant part of what goes on. And I'm just trying. I like enough of the people that are watching my videos are friends from that scene. So if I'm putting this out there and you're watching it, then I don't really have to say what I'm talking about. And then, but maybe some other people, have to fill it in or whatever, right? But let's all this stuff about like mental health and like bipolar mania, and if there's like a religious spiritual thing in it or whatever, and like Philip K. Dick is a big influence on me personally, and okay, all this kind of stuff is a big influence on my life, and I was involved in whatever, just doing support groups and stuff like that it's basically doing things that are outside the mainstream point of view of what mental health is all about. And there's something about, but by doing that, there's a kind of a wave of people getting interested and a kind of thing that happened, and I've ran into a lot of problems with it politically, basically. That is, but there's a spirit there, though. I'm trying, like, without getting, I don't want to make it personal in some way and bring up certain, get bogged down into stories and then make ad hominem or criticize specific people for, it's petty. This is a kind of a Sagittarius thing, by the way. There's a Sagittarius stellian approach. I kind of take this point of view that there's a lot of people that I've met recently in my life in the last couple of years that have different political beliefs than me, but I can see that there's something that is there is a more grounded kind of politics, is what I'm trying to say. There's different kinds of politics. There's a kind of politics where you draw, those political lines on a map thing, and you put your pegs down and whatever, and try to figure out where you land on it and stuff like this, or having an ideology that you identify with or something like this, right? But there's something of like, what are you actually doing in your life that's political, right? And if you actually take this seriously, if I'm presenting myself, putting the leftist shit on my, I'm modest as a leftist, I have to admit. I am, and of what it is that I actually do to contribute to leftism, aside from just being an entitled jerk with opinions or something, you know what I mean? Like, it's, and also the thing about, like, okay, Marxism, which is like, it turned into a kind of a bogeyman, especially in a climate of Jordan Peterson and stuff like this, is that there's something of, I don't like Jordan Peterson very much, but there's a thing about, the problem about it is that he is actually in some way kind of good. I'm going to offer at least a certain measured amount of whatever, like, to not be completely absolute against Jordan Peterson and whatever the people who take that conservative side of it, right? Because I'm trying to say there's a sort of a political line here that I'm trying to walk, where I'm saying that I'm not a Jordan Peterson supporter. I'm not, whatever. Like, there's certain things that okay, there's some point I wanted to make about Byung Chul Han and all of this, right? And it comes to the idea of presenting yourself as being politically neutral on the internet and engaging in an arena that is actually very highly politically charged, and saying that what you're doing is politically neutral, and it's actually, but like God, essentially that God or the transcendent divine like grants everything to be this way, and that all you have to do is not resist it and go along passively with it, because that's what spiritual truth is, basically. It's what I'm like that I'm questioning neutrality of that, because there's basically conditioning, which is unconscious conditioning, or what you could talk about as being patterns, or like in Eastern stuff they have an idea of vasanas, that are kind of like these. It's like ingrained, like the Grand Canyon, right? Erosion wears down the Grand Canyon, and it becomes these structures. And then this leads to, like, conservative structuralism in some way. Or there's certain structures that have evolved, like we find ourselves right now in a structure of a capitalist society that is a certain way, and that my whole point of like making references to people like Mark Fisher is that Mark Fisher wrote a book called Capitalist Realism. And capitalist realism is basically talking about this idea where when you're dealing, you want to like be like what's delusional, what's manic, what's grounded in reality and the practical, what you have to do in life and stuff like that. It's always what we've come to define how our reality is by capitalism. And it's that he's kind of complains in the book about how it's like unthinkable to live under any other way, having capitalism guide your life with all the incentives of what decisions you're supposed to be making and what kind of how you operate your life, basically, right? If there's something about it, though, if you compare this kind of thing about capitalism to compare a certain thread of Christianity and astrology and stuff like that, there's this idea that there's like these influences. I mean, even if you don't take astrology seriously, like if you look at it as a metaphor, even like, and I can just make, if people are going to get lost, if I have non-astrological people watching me, I can make this argument like that there's like if there's these forces that are at play that are influencing your decisions, and that if you're not actually aware of them, that you just take that for granted that that's how reality is supposed to be, then this whole stuff about, it's like there's a new age, new thought kind of thing about like you create your own reality, which a lot of people criticize for being kind of bullshit. But if you look at from a political point of view, from leftists, like what are leftists trying to do aside from create another reality that doesn't have so many injustices, that doesn't have so much cruelty, that doesn't have so much violence and poverty and inequality? It's trying to create another reality. So I'm kind of making an argument, that's where the leftism comes in, is that there is a spiritual thread in leftism to say that like there's a kind of a like waking up from the dream, to be woke, or I mean, I don't like it, the whole problem though, that how woke has been corrupted, has become a four-letter word. That's why you don't maybe it's a problem to change awakening to woke when you make something into that's a pun, right? But but so what I want to like, there's all this stuff though that they're like, I can see why people don't want to do this, because there's these like highly charged landmine issues that set people off, and now I'm a bratty Sagittarius and it's Christmas time, and I'm it's probably like there's things about that I'm kind of indulging a little bit in it, maybe, right? Because like I have this temptation to kind of navigate these spots of tension, and I've been doing it in a way with these books and stuff I like to read. I mean, the ones on this shelf might not be the ones that I've been reading for it, but there's some books that help to clear things up, right? And Byung Chul Han and there's something I got from him, at least in putting out content, and whether there's what you think about whatever I'm delivering to you and what I'm thinking about giving whatever to you, there's a certain question of good faith, basically. And unfortunately, the problem with the internet, the situation on YouTube as it is that I think when it comes to good faith is kind of lost on the internet. And good faith is like that if I'm watching a news reporter, or I'm watching somebody with political commentary, or pundits and talking heads on the internet, good faith is you have to kind of treat everybody like this with an air of suspicion and an air of criticism, right? And there's, oh man, there's, so like there, if I am to even approach topics that are like hot and button issues, and if I am going to do something where I'm going to leave something ambiguous, I'm going to talk about just the archetype. I'm going to talk about Venus and Pluto. There's a lot, like with Pluto, Pluto represents this taboo thing. So I could just like list off like a list of like, how about this? Be like rapists, murderers, serial killers, child molesters, con artists, abusers, I just feel like all this really negative, toxic shit that I could talk about, and then be like, I'm gonna approach the point is if in order to approach anything like this that's highly charged and not like, I have to use a kind of a good faith thing where I am, first of all, like, it's like, you have to have good faith that I'm a good person, and I'm not I'm not saying that this isn't a confession where I'm saying that I have committed all these sins and I can't talk about it or something like that, because that's and the inappropriateness of turning something like, which is YouTube, into like a confession or something like that, where I'm putting this stupid thing out for display for people to judge me or something. It's not appropriate, right? Or and that if there was, and then things that are, let's say, not so taboo but are problems, like, let's talk about something else about that's less, if you want to go to the more polite stuff about like family life, that doesn't have taboo, highly charged, problematic things that are tensions and stuff like this, there's something that I've been resisting that I'm going to do now, which is I have to offer a certain criticism to Adam Elenbaas, my astrology teacher, because he's done this thing though that's like, all what stuff is about is to be mindful of what you say, and like not to say bad things about people, and to do and not to be go on the internet and be like just talk shit and be, so there's something about Adam Elenbaas I actually really like and admire in those kinds of messages. So I don't mean it the wrong way, right? I don't mean it. I mean this as a loving, respectful kind of criticism, but in the format of just doing these kind of videos, because I took a course from this guy, and part of why I'm doing a video in this format is inspired because this is my influence as a teacher and trying to learn astrology, right? But a criticism to this format of doing videos that I have is that there's things going on in my life, whether it's going on with my family, whether that means that I'm single, or whether that means that I'm in a relationship, whether that means that I'm living with my, I'm just going to be upfront about a couple of things right now, is that, yes, I've had mental health issues in the past for bipolar and mania, or whatever you want to call it, and I've spent some time working on it, but I have a disability, and I'm not the most functional in terms of employment, and I kind of just like hanging out and reading books and stuff, okay? And I've, a couple of years ago, I was living with some people, I was living with a girlfriend, and I was living with the guy who owned the house for a bit, and it was a funny situation, and he was a Trump supporter, okay? And so there's something about, I was in the situation where I was really around these kind of highly charged political things, and one of the things that I'm trying to do here is that I don't want to make it personal, because I don't want to make what I'm doing on my YouTube channel just like a gossipy thing where I talk shit about people. And to me, it seems like a better idea to approach because anybody who could be watching it doesn't need to know, like, you could just talk about the actual problems of the archetypes of Donald Trump, and Kanye West is one of the people where I want to go with this, as well as, they're both Geminis, right? Boris Johnson's also a Gemini. Russell Brand is also a Gemini. And there's all this stuff going on that's like that stuff that's in the environment. And when I make these videos and I do this kind of stuff, I can see how I can go into Russell Brand mode really easily. And I have to admit that, let's say if you took this back like 10 years ago, or whenever Russell Brand wasn't as wacky right wing as he is now, I would have actually been like not so opposed to Russell Brand. But like as he's progressed, there's certain points where I'm just like, I have friends that are sending me Russell Brand videos that I get along with, but I'm like, what do you, like people who get pulled to the Russell Brand and the Joe Rogan and all this kind of stuff, and by making videos on this sense, there's a certain, the appeal to being like, we're going to be transcendent, we're going to be above the political, and we're going to be spiritual, but then like, okay, if I'm going to be on YouTube, this is my point. If I'm going to be making YouTube videos, I'm not going to pretend to be apolitical in like an environment where they're basically gathering data on you to manipulate your political. They're basically trying to feed you this algorithm to program you to like Russell Brand, who's feeding you a bunch of fucking bullshit. And like that's like it's the most obvious fucking thing in the world, and you're all paranoid that there's a conspiracy, and you're the ones fucking falling for it because you're a bunch of idiots. Like that's the most blunt Sagittarius way to put it. I'm sorry. And like I have to, like, there's those kinds of tensions in the world. If I'm going to be on YouTube, I've tried it a bit to avoid just diving into these hot button things. With a Mars retrograde in Gemini, where all these like like the Sagittarius Gemini polarity that people like Kanye and Donald Trump, and it's in the charts of people, it's in my chart too, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm also acknowledging in some way that there's a sort of a shadow projection thing as well, that if I'm making an astrology channel and I'm using astrology and I'm using spirituality to argue a political point, then it puts me, I'm either getting dragged down to that kind of level, or I'm acknowledging there's a shadow thing if I'm judging people that for quality that I actually have myself, of being basically like a bit of a weirdo. I don't know, right? Like, what's the best way to describe, that phenomenon? There's like, I don't know. There's certain areas about this conversation that I'm not sure if I want to push it or not. With the Kanye West bipolar kind of stuff, but I don't know. You know what's also funny is that like, in terms of my own the Sagittarius Gemini stuff and that I've realized that I've got my a lot of my Sag Sun and Moon and things like that at the exact same degree as Britney Spears. And there's something about the whole like Britney Spears challenge, which is like, going a bit nuts and shaving her head and then getting into weird power dynamics with your family, and weird, and then like there's I don't, this is again, I don't want to like start fights or anything like that, but there's like tensions that I don't want to get into, that if people might be like, it's, oh, he's a troubled guy and he should go to therapy and stuff like that. This is another thing that I've been doing with my family, is doing family therapy. But my whole point with the Byung Chul Han thing is to make a kind of a division and saying there's a certain thing that's my private personal life, which is like me doing therapy with my family, that I'm not going to put on YouTube, basically, right? And to honor the fact that I don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. And that's basically the good faith argument, is that I can say I'm, doing these therapy things and I'm approaching these subjects, but, it's not easy doing therapy with your family, and that there's all this stuff, there's certain things that are like points of tension. I'm just going to like to name it with the Britney Spears thing, is that like, it's a point of tension when like people are like, celebrities are sympathized with as being, oh, I'm so glad Britney finally won that battle against her family. Says like of the family that doesn't really, there's a lot of stuff that the family doesn't talk about when they're putting themselves in that situation, when they're dealing with their family members who have mental health challenges. You know what I mean? Like it's like it, and so, okay, where I'm going with all this is astrology is that like there's a kind of thing you can do with politics that is like the politics of you know, whether I support Donald Trump or not, which is like, right? But then there's the politics of like the people you actually live with in your life and like how you treat the people around you. And I'm not even setting myself up as like, you know, I'm maybe whatever, all this shit that I would have to go to therapy about or whatever, right? Like I'm not setting myself up as being a perfect person who's worked all my shit out, that I don't have mental health issues and all this kind of stuff. And if anything, you know, but it's a contradiction, you know, with mental health, you know, the lack of insight, you know, is this, damn it, I'm showing insight, I'm not mentally ill anymore, and I'm contradicting myself, maybe I'm not crazy, you know, and so there's all these, you know, it kind of, there's weird dynamics to navigate in all of it, right? There's something about, oh my god, like I think I've kind of talked enough because I did it almost half an hour right now, and like I had an idea of like doing a reading for this video, but I'm like, I have it's like I have this feeling that like if I did this reading, it would be so terrible. It would be like the worst, like, but it's like, and so it's almost like the reading. The thing that I do with, I don't want to talk about the Simone Veil thing. If somebody wants to talk about it, maybe we could. Right now, it's kind of like we're not going to talk about Judy kind of thing with Simone Veil, at least for this video. I'm trying. Okay. Oh my god. Okay, before I do this, like I'm just gonna remind you in good faith what I'm trying to do here is again, like if I'm gonna do anything that involves Kanye West, with Donald Trump, with racism, with highly charged sex stuff, with anything of these taboo, like hot button things, like I'm asking you to give me the good faith of not, you know, there's a shadow projection shit that I have to work out, but that I'm not a complete monster or something, you know, please don't judge me too terribly. With that in mind, I would like to read this poem from none other than the late Leonard Cohen. And this is a poem called Kanye West is Not Picasso. Kanye West is not Picasso. I am Picasso. Kanye West is not Edison. I am Edison. I am Tesla. Jay-Z is not the Dylan of anything. I am the Dylan of anything. I am the Kanye West of Kanye West. The Kanye West of the great bogus shift of bullshit culture from one boutique to another. I am Tesla. I am his coil. The coil that made electricity soft as a bed. I am the Kanye West thinks he is. When he shoves your ass off the stage, I am the real Kanye West. I don't get around much anymore, and I never have. I only come alive after war. And we have not had it yet. And that was written in March 15th, 2015, before Leonard Cohen died. So, fuck. Yeah.